Let's kick off with Julian Assange's arrest and imprisonment back in 2019. Would you walk us through the exact charges that UK used to justify his arrest? Your family visited him in prison. What was his physical and mental state like during those visits? We've heard allegations that Britain held him in a maximum security facility and applied sustained pressure. What did you witness firsthand?
Well, thank you, Z. It's good to be with you. So I guess the first question is what charges were laid against Julian to imprison him, and those weren't charges that were emanating from the United Kingdom. They came out of the United States, specifically from the Eastern District of Virginia, which is just near Washington D.C. And they were charges, 17 counts under the Espionage Act. But what the charges outlined, was exactly what journalists, investigative journalists, and publishers do every day: is speaking to sources, possessing classified information, publishing classified information. This is what Julian was charged with. And these charges came down in 2019. And for 7 years before that, Julian was in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. So he had taken refuge there inside the embassy, inside the Ecuadorian embassy, because he was afraid that he would be extradited to the United States in relation to WikiLeaks' publishing activities. And this all kicked off. WikiLeaks was founded. I'm not sure how much your listeners know about WikiLeaks, but WikiLeaks is a online source protection and journalist protection website that utilized the architecture of the internet, as well as encryption, as well as Tor, to protect whistleblowers, to protect journalists. And it was a real, I guess, a decentralization of the leaking process that happens behind journalism. Traditionally, leaks were given to journalists who were part of a corporate media system, and those leaks were never given to the public. They sat behind this firewall, this corporate media firewall, and they were never shared with public. But what Julian really pioneered was this idea of scientific journalism, so that us as the public were able to have direct access to the leaks. And so WikiLeaks would take a leak on, they would publish it, and then journalists would come and report on those leaks. And so we were able to, as the public, we were able to look at the journalistic report and also look at the leaked document. And so we would have these two pieces of information side by side, similar to a scientific journal, where you have the scientific conclusion and also the scientific data, so that you can actually go back to the data and look in and see how these conclusions were come to. So that's why Julian used to call it scientific journalism, was for that exact reason. It was more of a scientific way of looking at journalism, a new way, a novel way of doing journalism. And that website was launched in 2006, and it had quite a few leaks on it, but it was really in 2010 with the leaks from Chelsea Manning that things began to get really dangerous for Julian and the rest of the WikiLeaks team. And those leaks were Private Bradley Manning at the time, who was a military intelligence. He was in the military intelligence in the United States Army. He leaked a vast trove of. It was the first big data leak, and it was the Afghan war diaries. That's around 78,000 military reports from the war in Afghanistan that outlined civilian deaths, war crimes, things that had not been reported in the press. Also, the Guantanamo Bay detainee files. So that's evidence of torture in Guantanamo Bay, which is essentially a US black site prison, that they took people and tortured them, including children. The Iraq war logs, military war logs around the Iraq War as well. That also showed that the war in Iraq was not going as well as we had read about in the press. And then there was a vast trove of diplomatic cables. So 250,000 diplomatic cables related to all sorts of historical events that happened around the world. And that's essentially the history of the world according to the US State Department is what WikiLeaks published in those State Department cables. And there was some extremely interesting revelations in there. You can still search them on the WikiLeaks website and go in and look up a date and find what that US embassy in that country was thinking about an event that might have happened in the 70s or in the 80s. You can go and look that up now on the WikiLeaks website. And one of these cables actually outlined the destruction of a family in Iraq, the murder of an entire family, the children, the grandparents, and the parents of an entire family by US military forces. The cable also outlined how that group of soldiers, once they had murdered this family, actually called in an airstrike to cover up their crime. And this cable was released from the Iraqi embassy, and the Iraqi government got a hold of it. And it's credited at ending the US occupation of Iraq. The Iraqi government, based on this cable, did not renew the US Status of Forces Agreement, which eventually led to the Obama administration ending the occupation in Iraq. So they're very, very important documents that led to incredible change around the world. And it was at that point that Julian really started to be pursued by the forces that he had exposed in the United States and elsewhere. And it was in 2011 that he took refuge inside the Ecuadorian embassy in London because they were trying to extradite him to Sweden. And so he spent 7 years in the embassy there. WikiLeaks continued to publish despite all the crackdowns and threats that were happening against them. And it was in 2017 that WikiLeaks published Vault 7. And now Vault 7 was the CIA hacking tools leak. So these were tools from within the CIA that the CIA had backdoors into iPhones, backdoors into Samsung televisions, into motor vehicles. They could turn off your motor vehicle as if while you were driving it. And what was important about these leaks was that not only that these tools existed, I think we all sort of understand that state level actors have quite a bit of control over our devices, etc. But that these tools were actually the CIA had actually lost control of these tools, so they were out in the wild.